the corner. Nachi na li anu dam nan jiri wrong. Nanoi nachi, hali ho. Nanoi la klinjiri, winjira, pau powder. Napile am pambruka. Napi potangi, blajigun guguda yari nan jiri koni. Napi kuna baraka nendi. Nanoi nachi, tukuri no repeldi, napi pleasure nanga, napi koko pangala kawajiri. Napi amana pra wati wajiri. Yori hangan, tuna nan jiri wrong, nani nyalan, nani jiri nyik panahe kuna kapala. Lord Yandi, Nami nani jiri wrong, and initi, yanchile. Trying to get my breath at the same time. So ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you all to Naranjiri country. My name is Harley Hall. My clan is Gulunjara Paupolra from the Yardi mob. I live in Murray Bridge. I'm a proud Google the Naranjiri Yardi man. I'm from Coonabarra and Racken. My totem is the Bony Brim, the Pelican and the Black Mustard. I'm a proud father of 3, I have 2 daughters and I have 1 son. Together we're all meeting on Naranjiri country. We'll acknowledge Naranjiri elders past, present and future. Welcome to our Naranjiri country. Thank you and peace be with you.
Thank you, Harley. And I'd also like to acknowledge that the country we're meeting on is the traditional land of the Ngarrindjeri people. Under this building, it was, is and always will be Ngarrindjeri country, and I pay respects to elders past, present and future, and also to acknowledge the cultural wisdom of Aboriginal people in the room here today. Thank you for coming to this forum. We're a bit excited to be talking about our foster care program and thankful that Penny Wright, the Guardian for Children and Young People in Care, is able to be here to talk about her role of caring for young people in South Australia who need somewhere else to live. And the foster care program is an area that we are very proud of, and that we can provide that safe place for particularly country kids to stay living in country communities, and that's a critical part of what we're doing. Today we're going to hear a message from the Minister for Child Protection, the Honourable Rachel Sanderson, and we're going to hear from Penny. We're going to see a film of 2 of our carers, Tracy and Holly, who are here in the room. I'm really excited to see and to hear about their story of being foster carers. I want to acknowledge the inspiring carers that we have in our community. They aren't paid, they are essentially volunteers who are reimbursed for some of their costs, but they are providing an amazing community service for all of our communities, and the benefit that they provide is quite widespread. It provides an opportunity for families to reset, and hopefully that young people can return home to their family of origin in a safe way. But if that's not possible, then providing a long-term alternate place for those young people to grow and grow into adults with hope for the future. I'd also like to acknowledge the staff that we have. We have a great team of placement support worker staff and a range of other staff who work in supporting both our family-based care and our residential care. We have 2 residential care facilities in Murray Bridge and 4 in Mount Gambier, and we've been invited to consider growing that program as well. So we're quite excited about that, because we're often struggling seeing local kids end up in Adelaide, and we know the challenges that they face when they're away from their communities. I also want to acknowledge the young people. They often don't have a choice when they're coming into care. They've often experienced significant trauma, and even just the trauma of moving from your home into another home is traumatic. But acknowledge the trust that they put in us, that we can support them, working with the Department for Child Protection. But it's a real team approach, working to keep young people safe and provide a safe home for them. So I want to acknowledge those young people, and ac.care has about 260 young people that we're supporting in family-based care and 22 young people in residential care. So it's quite a large number, but it's increasing significantly every year, and that's part of the challenge and the reason we're here today is that we need more carers, more families to open up their home to these young people.
Welcome to everyone at the ac.care Murraylands Forum. I'm sorry that I can't be there with you in person, but I really thank CEO Shane Maddox for organising this event and his staff, and particularly thank all of those prospective foster carers who've taken time to be there tonight, as well as Penny Wright, the Guardian for Children and Young People, who I'm sure will have a lot of information to share with you. We all know that keeping children in their community is vitally important. When children can no longer be with their own biological family, we know that being connected to their schooling, to their sports, to their community is really important for children. So it's very sad when we see a lot of country children that have had to come and live in the city in order to find foster carers, and even some of them end up in residential care. We know that much better outcomes come for children who are able to be with family, and even more importantly, to be with foster care family in their own community. So thank you for your interest in becoming a foster carer. I hope to see some of you with children in the future. If it's not for you, maybe you can promote this to other people. We know that families come in all different types, whether you're a single working person, whether you're a couple, whether you have children, no children, your own children might have grown up. We need all kinds of different families to take on what really is the most rewarding and challenging, but most important thing that you could ever do for your community is to help raise a child. So thank you for your commitment, for being there tonight, and I hope it goes really well.
But the reason why we're here is, like Shane said, this is about how we're supporting vulnerable children in the community. And for me, that's been doing this job for many years now, over 18 years. I think I started in like 1997, something, as a residential care worker on the floor in a residential care facility, you know, working with young people in a residential care setting, and then developed and grew my career, and worked in DCP, also Department of Child Protection, for nearly 12 years. And we can't do this work alone in the community without foster carers. If I look at the foster care or the children coming into care, and Shane did briefly talk about that, you know, January 2021, 4,471 children under guardianship orders within South Australia, or custody of the Chief Executive. 1,600 of them are in foster care. 2,100 are with kinship care placements, and 626 are in non-family based care, which is the residential care settings. And I think that's just reflective of why these forums are so important, to get the message out there to the community, to invite prospective and new carers into a forum like this, learn from each other, learn what's happening in the community, and by word of mouth, what happens then is that message goes out to the community. And like I said, I've been doing this role, not this particular role, but working in alternative care, foster care services for a long time. When I listen to carers, and I've presented at many forums, they've said, Dan, the best thing about a forum is that message gets out there, word of mouth. We talk to our family, extended family, and people then become interested. And like we'll see later today, you know, we have Holly and Tracy here, and talking about their role as foster carers, and you know, the support that has been offered to them, and how we actually do this in partnership. And that's the words for me about how we work, particularly with Department of Child Protection, alternative care services, and our foster carers. It's about a partnership approach, engaging with each other around that partnership approach, and supporting each other do the work that we need to do to keep children safe in the community. And what is the role of ac.care? And if you looked around the room at some of the posters in the room, the biggest one that says a lot to me is the big one in the middle. What is it about how we support country people to be safe in their home, to have enough money to live on, build strong, positive relationships? And I think if that's the culture that we embed in the way that we work in the community, it's a strong culture. It's a culture that comes from a very healthy place, and it's about supporting people in the community to do the work that we work in partnership with.
Good evening, everyone, and I'd also like to acknowledge that we're meeting on Nurrayng land tonight, and just pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging throughout Australia, and just say that I always feel when I do an acknowledgement of country, I always just say how proud I feel to be living on a continent with the longest continuing human civilization in the world. It's just amazing, and the more we learn, the more we realise how far back that continuing civilization stretches. It's always gives me tingles on the back of my neck when I reflect on that. So thank you to ac.care for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, and I was really happy to do it. I was really pleased because I'm in a role which is independent of government. I'm not part of DCP. I'm actually appointed under legislation, and my staff and I, our job is to be independent and to actually monitor and promote and champion the rights of children and young people who live in the care system. So I do get a really big overview of the circumstances of kids in care, whether they're living in foster care, kinship care, residential care, independent living. We hear from children in all those different varieties of living up to when they turn 18. And I've had the opportunity to actually witness the transformation that can happen with a child who's gone to live with a carer or a family who's able to give them the love and attention that they need, to be there for them, to back them up when they need it, and to respond to them as a unique, special person. And it can actually make an incredible difference to kids' lives, and I've actually witnessed that, so I'm really happy to speak from the heart about those things tonight. Sadly, that's not always available for all children, all the children who would benefit from that. So you've already heard from Dan that there's currently over 600 children and young people who are living in what's called residential care. South Australia actually has the highest reliance on that kind of care of any state or territory in Australia. In South Australia, it's around about 13.5 or 14% of children and young people, so 13 or 14 in every 100 are living in residential care rather than in other forms of care like family-based care. And that's about twice the national average, so twice as many children in the South Australian population live in that sort of care. So I thought I'd start by looking at what residential care means for people who might not know what that means. So residential care is where a child or a young person lives in a house that's staffed with paid carers who work on shifts. So sometimes the children might be living on their own in the house. More commonly they're living with other children or young people, and in the big units there's sometimes still up to 6 or 7 others living there with them. These other children might be their brothers and sisters, or they may be children that they're not related to. And some of these residential care facilities are run by government, by the Department of Child Protection, and some are run by non-government agencies, and ac.care has some we've heard about already. Now, it's important to say that none of what I'm going to say about resi care is intended to denigrate the carers who work there. There are many loving, generous, passionate and courageous carers who staff residential care facilities who will go above and beyond for the children and young people that they work with. And given that it's necessary, because we don't have enough other ways to accommodate kids, it's absolutely crucial that they're willing to do what's often a very challenging job, because there are some exceptional people who work in that, and some of them are called and have been doing it for a long time, so they're very skilled. And they make a huge difference in the lives of the kids that they work with. And I know that because I also have quite a bit to do with young adults who've left care through the Create Foundation and others. And they come and sometimes do work with us in our office, who keep us real by telling us at a slight perspective where they can look back and talk about their care experience. And I know that for some of them, it was these carers that kept them going. However, I've got to say that there are inevitable deficits in a system that houses and manages children using paid staff. So I'm going to tell you what the children and young people tell us about that. This is what they tell us. They tell us that they know that their house is their home because it's the only home they've got, although sometimes it often doesn't really feel like a home. It feels like somewhere to lie down and go to sleep at night. But it's not the home for the workers. They know that. It's the workers' workplace. That's the reality. So the workers get to leave at the end of their shift and go home to their families. The kids are really acutely aware of that. They also know that the workers are paid to work there. Now, that doesn't mean the workers don't care and won't go above and beyond, and I know that happens. But there's something in the way children and young people perceive it that's amazing to them if someone does something for nothing. They just talk about it, even the smallest thing. If they know that someone's buying a coffee out of their own money when they catch up with them at a cafe, rather than paying for it on a card that's covered by their work, there's something about that sends that message to the children and young people. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just telling you that's what they tell us. So they know, and if things aren't going well, they always in their minds are conscious of the fact that, well, someone's being paid to look after me. But children and young people tell us that staff come and go, sometimes unpredictably, through sickness, holidays, because they're working. Of course they're entitled to holidays. Sometimes they'll leave because they're having a baby, or they're moving to somewhere else. Sometimes they're resigning. Sometimes they're called to work elsewhere at short notice, and that happens quite a lot in some of the systems. Ultimately, I guess the point is that for the children that we hear from, they have nowhere else to retreat to. This is their only home. I will say that for a small proportion of children and young people, it's true that residential care is a better option than care in a family. Some kids need the one-on-one support of a trained and skilled professional team around them, particularly if they've experienced severe trauma and abuse. Sometimes they'll need that for a period of time to help them to do some healing and be able to live within a family and with other people. So sometimes it is preferable. And some sadly just are not able to live in a family until that healing has happened. But many more, both young and older children and young people, teenagers, adolescents, yearn for a carer who will be able to offer them the security and love and attention that they personally want and need. So for most children, a family is the best place to grow up in, and that's what the Minister said, and I'd support that certainly. And we also know, as she said, that families come in all shapes and sizes. So we might have a household with 2 adults, 5 other kids, a cat and a dog, or we might have 1 caring adult and 1 child, and many variations in between. But the common element about families is their restorative and transformative power of stable, loving, enduring relationships. It's that commitment to be there through thick and thin, and knowing that someone's got your back, that kids in care often haven't experienced. One of my jobs, among many, as guardian for children and young people is to, and it's set out in the legislation, is to monitor the circumstances of children and young people in care. So my staff regularly sit in on the annual meetings that have to occur when kids are in care. So each year there's a meeting of the care team to assess how they're travelling, how they're living, where they're living, how they're faring, whether their needs are being met. Often those meetings go for about an hour, and we really encourage and support officers to have children and young people there, as well as their carers, sometimes their original birth families, someone from the school, sometimes some of their other, if they're having therapy, some of their other supports, to see how they're going. And my staff often come back with stories of what they've heard, both happy and sad. And so I thought to finish off, I might like to share a couple of those with you tonight. So there was a review for a young girl, we'll call her Libby, who was 7. And one of the workers who was supporting her foster carers and who knew her had said in the review that Libby didn't know how to smile, laugh or hug. She was a sad little girl. This is when before she went into foster care. She had challenging behaviours and she wet the bed and had nightmares. And I think the indications are she probably had been sexually abused before she came into care. However, in the space of 12 months, that changed since she'd been living with her foster carer, who loves her and is committed to providing an ongoing long-term home for her. She was described by those around her as now happy and full of beans. And she still has a connection with grandparents, and at the review they said that she is happier than they've ever seen her before. They said she's come along in leaps and bounds since living with her foster carer. And they all agreed that the last 12 months have been an absolute turning point for her because she was loved and cared for by so many. So the space of 1 year, that turned that little girl's life around. And I might tell you one other story. We'll call this person, this boy Max. So 10 years ago, Max started living in a specialist therapeutic placement with his foster carers. So there's various types of foster care, and when the child has particularly high level needs, there might be specialist trained therapeutic foster carers. So they are really very well skilled to be dealing with the children that they have. He was 7 at the time, so that was 10 years ago, And they were therapeutic foster carers because he really needed the help. He was at the highest category of challenging behaviours and having had experienced anxiety and trauma. So he was displaying extreme violence and couldn't regulate his behaviour or moods. 10 years later, in his annual review, at the age of 17, his social worker, still working with him, described him as a person who demonstrates focus, empathy, control and understanding. And says and remarked, and this was noted in the review document that my staffer brought back, he's had an incredible journey to self-regulation and self-awareness. His carers had written for the plan. He is a much loved and cherished member of our family and we love him dearly. Max, at the time of the review, was playing sport in a very high-level team, completing high school, described himself as being pretty happy, really, and his future aspiration was to take on a role in the future to help other kids just like him. I think that was the person who was reporting that to me. I didn't get to meet Max, but one of my staff said that that was one of the most phenomenal changes that she'd seen in a child in her experience. So finally, to finish up, I believe we all have the power to make a difference to the people that we meet every day in the smallest interactions. I think even if we talk kindly to someone at the checkout, we don't know what kind of day they're having. And it might be kindness after, or politeness after having been abused. They might be lonely. We might meet someone in the street. We can always make a difference in people's lives. But clearly, the sort of difference that foster carers make is huge. One of my favourite quotes comes from renowned doctor and therapist called Bruce Perry. He's an American therapist who's written and spent a lifetime working with children who've been subject to some unimaginable hardship. And one of my favourite books is The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, which is an awful title, but actually it's a series of chapters that show Dr. Perry's development from a young medical intern right through to a very experienced person and the different children that he worked with who taught him what he knew as he went. And he says, the more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely they will be to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change and the most powerful therapy is human love. We now have a lot of evidence that every child who ends up doing well, despite a really tough start in life, it's usually due to at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive adult who believed in them and was their champion, whether it's a teacher, it's a neighbour, it's an uncle, it's an auntie, it's a grandmother, or it might be someone else who just takes an interest in them. And so I guess the question for all of us is, what's our role? What can we do? And there will be some amazing people who will actually say, you know what, I'm going to take that next step and do that. And I take my hat off to the carers because I see the most amazing people in that role every day in my work. So thank you.
I think, everyone's probably wondering, why I'm here today. And I just want to reiterate that we just want to start having a conversation in community about the need for more foster carers. It's not about sitting here and recruiting every single one of you tonight. That's not the goal. And even for those that are watching at home on Facebook, it's about helping us get our word out about what's happening here. I thought I'd share an extra statistic for you guys, particularly it applies to the Murraylands. One that might shock you, but I think it's a statistic we need to talk about so that you're well aware, in the community of what's going on for kids. So for the month of February, just February alone, we were unable to place 113 children for Murraylands alone. I'm just going to let that sink in. And I feel emotional talking about it because that's 113 children that don't have safe homes to go to. But what we know is there's 113 children that need those safe parental figures, those safe families around them. I'm going to introduce you to Holly and Tracy, who I've been really privileged to work alongside. Much like our 72 households that we work with here in the Murraylands, they do an amazing job.
I see my role as nurturing them and healing them and getting them to a point of where they can flourish when they go home, or onto a long-term placement or to their grandparents. And a lot of times, like from one in particular, I had newborn twins, and I had them for a few months, and then their grandma put her hand up for them, and it's been 2 years since they left. But she actually sent me a message out of the blue the other day thanking me and how she'd like to keep in contact and with an update and photos of them, and said if it wasn't for what I did, it wouldn't have been as easy for them. So I'm doing, I guess, what I set out to do.
That's it. When my youngest went to school, and I tried a few things, and I don't know, nothing felt the same as having little kids around. I think I'm just so used to being a mum. My sister's a foster carer, she's done it for over 20 years, and she was like, you need to be a foster mum, you need to do it, you'd be great, Oh no, I couldn't do that, the old cliche, I couldn't give them back. I couldn't, I just couldn't do it. Then anyway, we started to think about it, and we made a few inquiries. Anyway, my sister got this new tiny little newborn baby, and we met her. I seen this little baby and I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. Yep, I'm gonna do it. So I came home, we talked to the family, the kids were all on board, hubby obviously, and we went from there. So I was talking to my sister over the internet about it, and the next minute an ac.care ad came up on my newsfeed. I'm like, oh, I might try them. And that's where our journey began. So we rang up and got the application form and things like that, and we went through the process very quickly. I think we had our first home visit in March. We had our report sent off in July. We were registered, we found out we were registered in September, and we got our first placement on the 13th of September, a few days later. And now we have long-term guardianship of her and her siblings. So it's been a really beautiful, happy story for us. All the kids chip in, they love babies and kids and everything, so they're all happy to chip in and play with them. They help feed, bath, read bedtime stories, they're right into it, I mean, we had to juggle rooms around a bit, when we've built our alfresco in and made it a toy room, and our lounge room is now a bedroom, and we bought a caravan for the older kids, and so a bit of juggling, but...
I've always wanted to be a foster carer. Like Mum said, my auntie's been doing it for over 20 years, and I still remember when I was 9 and she got her very first foster baby, and I went over there and I was like, this is what I'm going to do when I grow up. Obviously had some of my own kids first, but when I was 18 I rang up for the first time to ask to do it, and they said I had to come back when I was 25, and then obviously had my third child, and then when Mum started doing it I was like, yep, it's time for me to do it too, I'm going to do it as well. But my journey's been a bit different to Mum's in the way, so I've had 15 children over the last 3 years. My first little one actually came to me 2 days ago, 3 years ago, and I've said goodbye to a lot of kids, except for one, my baby girl. She got to stay, so I've had her for 14 months now, and so I've done a lot of the reunification or going to kinship and those sorts of things, where Mum, yours came and just got to stay forever. But I also went into it in that mindset though, that I wanted to help, take care of them, nurture them until they found their forever home or went back to their family or grandparents, kinship, wherever they went. But I just don't think you're ever as prepared for how much you're going to fall in love with them when they actually do come. And I always thought, how could anyone, get like a 1-year-old and they haven't had it from birth, but they just love it like it's their own. And my first one came and he was 13 and a half months, and it was like as if I'd never had him, like never not had him. He just, so I've had a different journey, but it's all been worth it because they've had a lot of good outcomes
give it a go, and the love you feel for those kids, I'm getting emotional now. You'll never regret it. I mean, you might get your heart broken because, you know, I'm lucky, but what you're doing for that child while you've got it, it's just all worth it. It's really, and you'll love them. Might be ups and downs, you know, but it's worth it. Well, for me, every minute has been worth it. Yeah.
Well, I've had a lot of people say to me, oh, you must have a really big heart. You know, I could never do that. My heart mustn't be as big as yours, but at the end of the day, my heart's the same as everyone else. It breaks. I grieve. I've been, well, my first one that left, it'll be 2 years in April, and I've only just got to a point now where I can talk about him without getting upset, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it does hurt, but I like to think of him as an adult walking around, having a good job, having good relationships, you know, building good connections from that time I did have him. And yeah, my heart has been broken and thing, but it's all worth it because you do heal, and there's always another one that needs you. You know, if every single adult helped one child, they wouldn't just be a number. There'd be a flourishing adult in the world that could say, I have a good life, you know, and they wouldn't be hurting. But yeah, so that's what I'd say.
We have a beautiful relationship. I really respect that she's the kid's mum and that she loves her kids very much. There's just sometimes situations where, you know, they can't raise them themselves, and yeah, I hope we can just, down the track, we can be one big happy family, and, you know, the kids will know that's their other mummy, and we can have birthdays and Christmases, and that would be my goal down the track, just to be one big happy family, and the kids can have all their connections and, you know, enjoy having two mummies and two daddies. We were all talking about this, and the principal social worker said, gosh, how do you get around with that many kids? And I said, well, we just take 2 cars everywhere. Just normal for us. And my actual worker, the kids social worker, just said, I think we should buy this family a car. And everyone just said, yep, I agree. And now we have a nice big 12-seater van to get us all around together. So yeah, we've been very blessed in our journey, I must say. Yeah.
I have had a lot of loss and not bad situations, but I guess not your normal situations. But so ac.care have been there for me every step of the way. All my support workers that I've had have been absolutely beautiful, and I really wouldn't have gotten through most of it without their support. So
yeah, and I'd say the same, just such beautiful, caring people, from the management down to everybody, the receptionists, everyone's just beautiful, helpful. I've loved every one of my support workers, like, absolutely love them, and yeah, you can just message them, ring them, they're always there for you, you know. They can't do enough for you.
And they're relatable.
They are.
As well.
Yeah,
you know, they understand and they'll...
Yeah, they come to visit and it might be 2 hours have gone, we're like,
yeah,
it's been that long, oops.
Or you ring up and it's like an hour and a half later, like, oh, I should probably let you go back to work.
It's we can't fault them at all.
No.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah. I wouldn't change agencies.
No, ever. I love it.
No.
Perfect. Oh, you need it sometimes if you're worried about something or you don't understand, you know, especially a new carer. It's so much like
processes that go into caring,
and the
sometimes.
jargon, you know, and not understanding sometimes, you know, what they're saying. You might think it's something else and you get worried, and you just ring up your worker and they'll clear it up for you, or they'll email the children's worker or whoever it is, and they'll sort it out for you and help you understand it. You're never alone. You're never alone, you know. They help you every step of the way.
Wow. I want to move in with you guys. You take 57-year-old babies. It's amazing, isn't it? The lives that change. It's changing the lives of the kids who are being looked after, the siblings in the household, the foster siblings, the carers, and your partners, but also your extended family. As you were saying, Holly, when you grew up, you knew your auntie's family and the foster kids that came in there. It's that sort of broader community, that village, to use the word, that comes together to bring kids up. And the relationship that you continue to have with the birth parents is really vital. These kids know that they were born into a different family. That's their identity. They never lose that identity as being part of another family, and to maintain that where that's possible and safe for everybody concerned is a fantastic thing. And we see that often with many of the young people that are in care, both in residential care and in family-based care, that we're able to maintain and support that connection with the family. So we have a great close working relationship with the local Department for Child Protection offices, and it really is a partnership approach of working with the department, looking after young people in care. I'd like to start with Michelle, who has a lot of involvement with our residential care space. Penny spoke about that, and I'll be reflecting a lot on the messages that Penny and her staff hear about young people in residential care. And we do try to make them as homely as possible, but always when it's a sort of rostered staff situation, it's never going to be a normal family household. But Michelle, can you talk to us about the kids in residential care and what they're saying to you and to our staff about the environment they live in?
Absolutely. I'd first like to start by just explaining that ac.care's residential care program, we have a capacity for 4 children per house. So although we have the rotating staff and roster, we have a relatively small staff team, very dedicated and skilled team. Although the staff team are highly skilled and trained in trauma responsive practices, we know that our children want families. We hear it regularly in client feedback. We can go a certain way to replicate a nurturing home life for our children, but ultimately we know that they're better placed with a family. Some of our children have stayed with us for in excess of 5 years, and during that time they have built really positive connections. Another benefit of having an actual family means that they can maintain those connections past the age of 18. So we've heard the stats and we've heard Penny's talk about residential care and how it's not ideal. I am proud of what we offer at ac.care within our resi care, but I also want to see all of our children have families.
We do see young people from our country communities end up in Adelaide. In Murray Bridge, we also see a number of Adelaide kids being placed in Murray Bridge as well. So when there's a young person in the system that needs care, the department will do whatever they can to provide a safe home. And sometimes that's not in their metropolitan community. But we know country kids really struggle when they're leaving their school, their soccer team, their family. We have a large number, about 30% of the young people in our care are from Aboriginal families. And we know when they are disconnected from their country, from their community, from their family, that really impacts on their identity and their future growth as adults is really impaired. So keeping all kids in their community with their extended family, with their friendship group is really important.
We've also become friends with my children's siblings carers. So there's it's a fair lot of children, and we get together regularly. We celebrate birthdays, Easter, Christmas, we catch up, have play dates, and the kids are really growing up all knowing that they're brothers and sisters, and we're all aunties and uncles to them, and it's like a big village actually.
We've heard about long-term care and short-term care, which might be around a family being able to sort of reset and be prepared for their child to return home, to be reunified. But respite care is also an opportunity for people who might not want a child placed with them long term, but are prepared to provide a weekend or a week here and there to provide a break for the young person or the child or the carers for whatever reason. And so there are a variety of opportunities to become involved and support young people, even as volunteers, to support families or support ac.care in the work that we're doing as well. Holly and Tracy, you've almost got an inbuilt respite system here, I'm assuming, that the kids in one house might end up sort of staying in another house. Do you end up with 12 or 13 children in your house at times sometimes?
Sometimes.
Yeah. and so have you been involved with residential, with respite care?
I've never used it personally,
You haven't needed
but
to?
I've had another foster carers, friends.
Okay,
their
so you
child
provide a
respite,
respite for other, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
but I've never used it. I don't need to. I've got
Yeah, you've got built-in
yeah, lots of
care.
spaces, yeah.
Our biological kids have always, they've all grown up together,
Mhm.
the little ones, so they've always swapped houses. Like my middle one might go, oh, I'm going to Nana's this week, and my sister will say, because there's only like 11 months between them, she'll say, oh, I'm coming to stay at your house for the week. So we just imagine with the little kids we have now, it'd be exactly the same when they get to the age of like, I'm going to Nana's, I'm going to Holly's. So,
Well, my little girl calls Holly Holly Nana.
Holly Nana's loud.
because I love you, Holly Nana.
What do you find personally the most rewarding out of helping these children?
I think just having them part of your family, getting to watch them grow, thrive, be happy, just be healthy, safe, and just that sort of thing, you know.
Knowing where they could be
Yeah,
if they weren't with us, or knowing what could have happened
yeah,
if you didn't dedicate that little bit of time.
yeah. I just think getting up every day and going in, get them out of their cots, and it's just privilege, happy, beautiful. I just keep growing my family.
Or even one night makes a difference.
It does,
Yeah,
yeah.
as I never thought it would. I always thought, one night would make a difference. And I had a baby come to me that was really underfed. And in that night, I managed to figure out how much he needed to be fed, and I passed on to the worker the next day, this is how much he needs, tell the next carer. And 14 months later, that carer messaged me and said he's gone to his family, and he ended up a big, chubby 14-month-old boy. So even one night makes a difference. Yeah, and that's pretty rewarding.
It is a big decision for people. It's not just one person in the household. It's all the adults in the household. It's the children who are already in the household. It's people who are visiting that household, extended family who might be there as well. So it is it's not a light decision to make. But I think we're hearing that if you make that decision and you work your way through the training and understand the supports that are available, and then have a child placed, that the benefits are immeasurable, really, for everybody that has that privilege of providing, helping a young person and their family of origin on a new direction in many cases. We invite people to share the message. So if it's not for you, but you know of somebody who might be interested, even vaguely, even if they've never talked about it, please have a chat to them. We do want a broad range of people, so it's not just married couples. It can be couples, it can be same-sex couples, single people, older people. We're certainly looking for people from diverse cultural backgrounds, so that we have a broader range of people who are offering support for families in our communities. And unfortunately, the situation of young people needing care affects many families in our community, and providing these alternatives where they're available, and being able to have a choice of who the children can be placed with would be the ultimate, really, so that we can match the needs of the young person to the families that they're placed with. Thank you very much.